Welcome back to the Finding Purpose podcast. My name is Adam. I am your host. I wanted to start by wishing everyone a happy new year. Holidays just passed. There's a lot going on, but I really hope you got a chance to decompress and spend time with family and friends and really enjoy and nurture that time, because rarely, as the hustle of a new year begins and you're setting goals and you're setting different tiers, both professionally and personally, that you want to accomplish, it's really important for you to have that time that you value with the people who matter the most. This year, I really wanted to start off with a big punch, because, we ended last year on such a great note with Neil Bakshi talking about spirituality, Dave Regina really setting systems and foundations for how to build and progress with your goals. And then a nice touch with Demetra, who really brought in just the importance of family and motherhood and how she found purpose through then. And then we ended with my solo episode where I shared how the last year was very, very trying for me. And there were a lot of things that I thought that I wanted to do. And through my experiences of the year, I learned what I really enjoy and where I need to work on. And I'm really grateful going to this year to have, for my first guest, a super powerful individual who emulates that both in her business and in the way that she approaches life. I'm proud that Maria Rodriguez I have here, she flew in from Texas. Unfortunately, not for me. It was her boyfriend's birthday, but we're going to say it's for me anyway. Regardless, Maria, I had seen speak at our friend Brandon Godoris's conference, A to B Con 2. And I remember when I saw you on stage and you shared your story and you shared your journey and you shared how you built your business, I was really inspired by it. And, at that time when I saw you 2 years ago, I was in that real transitional stage early on where you're really self-critiquing a lot. And I didn't have the confidence that I had to really approach you and be like, hey, can I have a minute of your time? This, and this was really struck me. Yeah. But our cross paths recently when we were both doing a challenge with Rob Trax, and, it was like, this is my opportunity. There's a reason why your name was on that list. And I was just like, I'm going to reach out to her and invite you on. So I'm super grateful to have you.
Thank you.
Thank you. And it's cool because we haven't really had a conversation other than the small talk that we did prior to this and the phone conversations. And I kind of love that. Me
too. I like that you didn't research me and like the people say, oh, I did my homework on you. And I appreciate that. But I feel like you get a pre-connotation or like a preconception of like who Maria is. And I think I know her. Like nobody knows me. Like I know me. Until you know me, then you'll know me, but I'm glad that you didn't do all that, because now you get to know me for me and not me because of my Instagram, my Facebook, my website. Because all of that looks, like I said, glamorous and pretty and polished, but the person that goes behind that is someone. It's a person.
Yeah, and I'd love to just kind of jump right into it with you. I know you're Mexican. You live in Dallas. I guess let's just talk about the early Maria. Maria, the little girl. Like, tell me about your early upbringing.
I was nothing like I am right now. I was very shy, very quiet, very timid. I was never loud, never spoke my mind. I was bullied. I was a pushover. Not like pobrecita, play the violin, but it was just more like very quiet. I was not confident. I was just a normal girl. I was growing up in a Mexican household. We were very traditional. At some point before my father died, we couldn't dye our hair, cut our hair either. Like now you see my personality. Yeah. You're looking at me like,
for those of you listening, she has her hair dyed a nice orange copper, excuse me, a beautiful copper hue. So she's allowed to dye her hair now.
Yeah.
But did you come from a big family?
We are 6, so 5 girls, 1 boy, and then we used to live in a house of 9. So it was my grandma, my dad, my aunt, my uncle, my mom, my 5 sisters, and my mom was pregnant. So it was a huge family. So, when you come from a huge family like that, you're either being bullied, you're bullying, or you're just surviving. And I feel like that's where my upbringing personality was at. that my sisters, now that I kind of gather with them for like the holidays, they don't really understand my vibe because they're like, this is not who you are. And I'm like, listen, we all evolve because, you learn to find you and your personality. And I'm very different than little Maria was a dreamer. I'll tell you that. I was a dreamer, and I was a type of kid that would hide under the bed just to escape the chaos of a big family, to read a magazine from top to bottom, left to right.
Really?
Every single page, even the credits. I would read the credits.
That's awesome. I mean, when you grew up with a big family in Mexico or in Texas?
Both.
Okay.
So we were in Mexico, and then we migrated to the U.S. And this is where I've been since I was 5.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you all moved to the U.S. and you said you were a dreamer when you were younger. Mm-hmm. What was the earliest dreams that you remember?
I wanted to be in the fashion world.
Okay.
Because I would, you look at me.
Yeah, I'm like, well, you're fashionable.
Thank you. I like to dress nice. I would read like those magazines from Bazaar. I would beg my stepdad. I was like, please buy me a magazine. And I would watch I would read the J14 magazine, Cosmo, Teen Cosmo, all those preteen magazines that they would like put on the shelves. This is 2001, 2002, 2000s. Phones weren't out a thing. But I was a dreamer. I wanted to be a writing editor because I was a big writer. When I was just stressed, I would write in my diary, but I never thought that was like a writing career. But I would see I would read the magazines and I was like, ooh, writing editor. Like I would like to do that. Live in New York. That was my dream. Like living in New York. And when I saw The Devil Wears Prada, I was like, that's what I want to be. So that was my whole dream. But then, you grow up and then you realize that, at some point I would like to still pursue that dream because I feel like the world is infinite and the opportunities are endless. So yeah,
that's awesome. Yeah. I mean, you said you either are bullied, you bully, or you survive. Which one were you?
Survival.
You're the survivor.
Yeah.
So talk about that experience, just like surviving.
Surviving as a kid was, I want to say you don't want to get in trouble because, when you live in a chaotic family, everyone gets in trouble. But if you just survive and you stay away from all the trouble, then you won't get in trouble. So it was more like, I didn't want to be spanked and I didn't want to bully anyone. I just wanted to be left alone. So I would just go and mind my own business. And, at certain point, kind of just, what do you call that? When you, isolate. I would isolate and escape to my magazines and that kind of stuff just so I could also escape the reality of being poor because we were a very poor family after my father died. And that was my escape, reading. And I found a lot of my dreams would come true when I would read these magazines and look at the pictures and dream about one day being there. And now I'm here and I'm like, fuck yeah.
Yeah. What was your relationship with your father? Who was an early mentor during that period of your life that you leaned on?
Did I answer your question though? The survival part?
You totally did. Yeah.
Okay. Awesome.
Because I mean, the way I look at it is you escaped into the magazines because that was your fantasy world.
Yeah.
And that's where your dreams are framed. And I think that's super important.
Yeah.
For me, I'm not really sure if I can identify something like that. I did isolate, but I kind of did what was told and what was expected of me just to fend off any criticism when I was really, really young.
Yeah.
Because I always felt different.
Yeah. We are different.
Yeah.
We don't have to fit. I think that's a beautiful part about being entrepreneurs.
Yeah.
That you don't have to fit in a world. You can create your own world. You don't have to have a table. You can build your own table because you got the skills that no one else has that most people take for granted. But it's not that they take them for granted, just they're not aware of them. But when you become self-aware, you became self-aware of your power to speak and you used it to your advantage to reach the masses and the millions, change lives, that is your superpower. And you're building your own table. And those are skills that not everybody has. And if they do, they're not honing them because they're not aware.
Yeah.
So,
well, I'm just, going back to when I was a kid, I don't really know whether I had that escape as much. What
was your escape?
I don't know. I feel like maybe music a little bit, but not really. I was raised Jewish. I went to a Jewish day school because my mom was Persian Jewish from kindergarten to 5th grade. And it really was just sticking to the script, going to school, going along with their routine, family dinners. And, by all intents and purposes, during that period of my life, I was very just not exposed to the family dynamic, or I chose not to look at it. But, obviously every family, there is going to be an imbalance, I feel like. And, when I got older, I was able to kind of identify it, but we were somewhat cookie cutter in that early stages of my life. My dad worked for IBM for 40 years. So, he had a good career, by all intents and purposes. I actually had a pretty good upbringing. But it wasn't until I got older where I, felt even more lost. I mean, at the end of the day, I always felt different. Like I was this brown dude in this Jewish day school. Like I've talked about this before, where it's like at that age, looking different and no one really talking about it. Mm-hmm. That was the thing, like no one really talks about, like when we were growing up, the things that people talk about now, I feel like, I mean, you were in this large family and you were surviving, like you said, you had your escape in the magazines and, and then you lose your father, and that's something that nowadays I feel like families would address it more, not only just like
sweep it under the rug,
but you come from a traditional family like mine. And when it came to emotions and traumatic things happening, we didn't really discuss it. We swept it under the rug. We made excuses for it. And that's it.
Yeah.
Was that experience, when you lost your father, similar?
It was. Yeah. It was.
How old were you?
I had just turned 9. He died 3 days after my birthday, and I remember we had this thing for ice cream. Go for ice cream together.
Love ice cream.
Me too. And he would buy, because it was a lot of kids and a lot of adults, so he would buy the big bucket with 3 flavors, and we would just all dig in. Sometimes it was 2 buckets. And for my birthday, we would go to the special ice cream, like Dairy Queen. And I was like, are we going to go? He was like, yeah. And at the time, how I saw it was that he was just busy. We would just go out and do ice cream and whatnot. But that year was different. He was murdered. And it affected me a lot because I remember feeling like a part of me died. I mean, I got sick to my stomach. I had like high fever. I had all kinds of like sickness, like the flu. And throughout his funeral, I was just sick. And it was crazy because, I just remember going and burying him and being at the cemetery, and then all those emotions of like loss and grief and like feeling like I feel like the curtain was kind of pulled back on life. Because shortly after my grandma died. And then after that, my uncle died. And then after that, my cousin that I was raised with died. And so before my family all came here, I came by myself with my father. And so I was raised by my aunt, my uncle, my cousin, and my grandma. And they all died, including my dad. So I was raised eventually with my mom and my sisters. And that was just like, who do I talk to when it comes to feeling lonely and still having your family? Because I had my family, which was my mom and my sisters. But what I remember was the love, and it's like when they say you were never going to remember what someone bought you or gave you or said to you, but you're always going to remember how you felt.
How they made you feel.
Yeah. And that's how I felt. I felt like something was missing, and it was all of them. Like my whole childhood was just wiped, and I was just like, I guess there's a word for it. It's like I was just left in pieces.
Left in pieces, yeah. I mean, that's crazy. I mean, I'm sorry for that tremendous loss. And, it's almost like you were grieving. You never really got a chance to grieve, and
no, I like grieved all my life though.
Yeah.
It's terrible.
And it's crazy because like I've had a similar experience, not so much with family, but close friends where, I had a friend pass away sophomore year. Then I had a friend pass away junior year. Then I had, later on, I had a friend who took her own life, and then my mom passed away. And then when you compound all of that, it's like, did I even process that first one?
No.
and you don't, and, obviously like it's very different for you when it's the foundation of your upbringing, and then now having to transition to your mom, who you should be able to find comfort in, and feeling still just as alone, so I can't imagine like what happened, after that, because, I know for me, when I bottle up emotion and don't deal with the shit that's in front of me in the moment and work on it, then I'm erratic. I make poor decisions. I punish myself. I hurt myself, without even knowing that I'm hurting myself.
True.
And that's something that I've come to terms with now, acknowledging and facing those dark times in my life. So tell me a little bit about, at this point you're like in your teenage years and you're growing up in Texas. What was that like? Obviously you're going through this dramatic shift and tremendous loss, but you still also kind of have to be a teenager.
Oh yeah. That's, I guess like it goes full circle when it comes to healing your inner child, because now I'm in the journey. I've been in the journey of healing my inner child, and that inner child work started like back in 2022 when I realized that I was still being triggered by a lot of the things that happened when I was younger. And I decided to start doing some inner work. And the first thing I did was talk to my coach, Cheryl Jones in San Antonio. She was a healing coach. So she was more like, I call her a healing coach because she really did help me break through a lot of those traumas. And it was her and the compilation of my coach, Steve Werner. So these coaches were people that you don't really find on the internet, like big time, but people that got brought to me in my life in the season that I needed them. And one of the things that Cheryl kind of emphasized on me was, you're healing that inner child, like you mentioned, like I mentioned, sorry. And we're thinking like, how can we move past these things, right? And I'm just sitting there like, I haven't processed any of this. Like, I'm growing up, I'm being a teenager. I go through life, I excel, and I'm thinking with a chip on my shoulder all this time, right? Because I'm growing up and I'm kind of like pushing the boundaries of how far I can get with my life. And my kids happened at 17. So I never had the time to kind of like sit down and say, what the hell am I doing? Like, who are these feelings?
You say your kids happened?
Yeah, my kids happened. I decided for my kids to happen at 17 because at that point I had already seen a lot of the life that had brought, like a lot of the experience that life had brought to me. And I was very self-aware at that point to where I started to reflect when I was like, maybe like 18. No, not even like at 15, I started to reflect. And people like reflect on their actions at a point in their life. But I clearly remember being 13 and starting to reflect on my own behavior. And I was like, how could I have handled that better? And for a 13-year-old to start thinking about those things, like now I look at my daughter. That's why I say it comes full circle, because I look at my daughter and she's reflecting on her own actions because of the self-awareness that, I've been able to feed her. Yeah. And it's just a compilation, like it all goes full circle.
It's crazy because the fact that you were the survivor of your family
kind of went on a tangent there, but
I get totally what you're saying but I'm going back to what you said earlier, where you identified yourself as a survivor in your family, and had you not been the survivor of your family,
I would have been a victim. You
would have been a victim, and that it could have led to such a different trajectory for you. So, now you're in your teens and you have your first child at 17. What was that like?
Twins,
boy
and girl. Yeah.
Was it, like, what was that like? Were you like in a relationship? Was it planned? And what was that feeling like, knowing that you were pregnant, knowing you're going to have twins, and knowing you're 17?
I remember it as exciting because my life had no purpose before them. Like, I'll be really honest, I was partying really early. My life was exposed to a lot of the street world when I was maybe like 11, 12. I had older sisters that would kind of go out and party. So I would go and tag along with one of them. And I started like hanging out with high schoolers when I was in middle school and doing things I wasn't supposed to, like drinking at 13. And I share my journey with you a little bit. Yeah. So we'll
jump into that later.
Yeah, of course. Yeah. And I remember like it all goes full circle. So I don't think anything happens to me, it happens through me. And so through my lessons, I can teach my 13-year-old daughter and my son, like, hey, I've been down this road. This is what's going to happen. I don't want you to be there. So I'm going to teach you how to be self-aware so that you can make better decisions and choices so that you will not only excel in life, but also teach it down to your kids. And we're going to start a new generation of emotional healing and awareness rather than one of being victims and suffering because you're unaware of the decisions that you could have made. So I think it's better than generational wealth, even though I am going to give them both. Right.
Yeah.
But it's like having that awareness. So it goes full circle. Being 13 with, being 30 with a 13-year-old. It's interesting because I did take that decision. You know, I was with the father of my kids for a year. We dated, high school sweetheart. And then we got pregnant and things changed.
Yeah.
He was going to college. He was playing sports. He was not ready. And I said, you know what? I am ready because I'm aware, right? I said, I am aware of the consequences. I'm aware of what's coming and I am ready for it. Because I know that I have really big faith.
Yeah.
And so I said, you know what? With if God is with me, who's against me?
Yeah.
And so even my mom was like, you're a kid raising kids. You don't even know how to take care of yourself. And she was right. I had no idea what I was doing, but I just know that I had mother's love. And are you a parent yet?
I'm not.
Okay. When you are, you'll see what I mean. But, you know, a lot of people don't realize that mother's love will break so many barriers and climb so many mountains. We will move mountains for our kids. Move mountains.
I love that.
Thank you.
I love that. Yeah. So at 13, you alluded to like that was the first time you drank.
Yeah.
And you're also in that period of self-reflection. Mm-hmm. And you had all this unresolved grief also. Mm-hmm. What was the feeling like for you when you discovered alcohol and discovered substances? Because I know for myself, it was a great way to not have to face things.
Yeah, it was a great way to not feel anything. I felt invincible. Like when I drank, I just felt like I could take over the world and I felt like nothing mattered. And I felt like it's a dangerous feeling because when you're 13, you got the whole life ahead of you. Mm-hmm. And you're a girl and I wasn't bad looking. So I look older, I look 16. So I was getting a lot of attention from guys. And at that point, I just felt like I knew too much about a lot of things. And it was a feeling of invincibility, but also escape. But once I got off that high, I felt like I need more because nothing matters. And that's why I say when I had my kids at 17, I felt like, okay, now I have a purpose to not party. And I have a purpose besides myself. I have a purpose besides just the weekend. I mean, you're facing these feelings at 16, right? When you should be facing those feelings at 21, 25. Because that's when you start partying in college.
Yeah.
But that's what the street life kind of just gave me.
Yeah.
And those feelings of like, there's nothing else matters. Fuck the world, basically. And I'm just going to do me. And if it's not my way, it's a highway. I was a huge brat.
Yeah.
Huge brat. I had no self-control, no discipline. I look back and I'm like, I'm glad I went through that because it made me who I am today.
Yeah. I mean, we're only at 17. Like, I feel like there's so much more.
That's why.
And, you know, I'd love to know, like, you know, following the birth of your children and now you're a single mom of twins and you have a big family that you could lean on, but motherhood.
Sort of. Yeah.
Okay. What was it like then?
Because my family is very traditional, Adam.
Yeah.
Very traditional. If anybody is Hispanic or Mexican, because we're Mexicans, we're not Hispanics. We're Mexicans from Mexico. So we're very traditional to the point where my mom was like, you made your bed. Now you got to lay in it. You're not going to count on me for diapers. You're not going to count on me for taking care of the kids. This is your decision because you think you're an adult. Go for it. And so she was like, you're on your own. And I did need them to help me out with the kids babysitting and all that stuff. But they always let me know like, hey, this is your decision. You need to grow up and you need to take care of them because you decided to do this decision based on your own judgment. We gave you the advice. You said no. The advice was give him up for adoption. And I had looked into the adoption agencies and I had talked to a family and they were ready to adopt. And they did tell me, just make sure that you're ready and you're 100% sure of your decision. But at the time, I only thought it was one. And when I went for my sonogram on my birthday, God was like, no, it's two. And it's a boy and a girl. And that's when I was like, ain't no way I can give him up for adoption.
Yeah. What was, I mean, that feeling like, because I guess, you know, finding out you're pregnant, like you knew they had options and you had that pressure from your family. And then you explore that option and it's almost like when you have an out. Yeah. You have an out.
God was like, there's normal. No out, Maria.
And then you find out they're twins and you're like, all right, I'm taking this on. At that point, are you still like partying a little bit?
No.
Okay.
I am 100% involved in going to church and fixing my relationship with the father of my kids. I am working, and things between him and I are not working. They're really rough, and they kept getting rough and rougher and rougher, to where I say, you know what, this is, there's gotta be there's a lesson. Like,
was it just like volatility and immaturity, or was it like ego? Was it abuse? Was it?
Well, I don't want to like badmouth him, right?
Yeah.
But it was me and him, and we were just not coinciding in the ideas that we both wanted for the kids.
Heard.
You know, his religion was Catholic, mine was Christian. He didn't believe in going to church. I did. The way that he was raised was Americanized. You know, you go to school, you do this, and this, and then certain things that were just like frozen fruit. We had a big old fight because of frozen food. I was like, this is not gonna work, because I want my kids to be fed organic stuff, natural stuff, and so we
frozen fruit.
Yeah, frozen fruit. Like, he was like, what about Hot Pockets? Like, I was like, no, your kids are never going to eat Hot Pockets. Like, and not shaming Hot Pockets, but, or people that eat them. Right. But it was just one of those things where I kind of knew where I wanted to take my kids, and like reading them bedtime stories was a big thing for us till they were like 8 or 9. They stopped asking me for a bedtime story. And that was so heartbreaking, because every single night, Adam, I would read them a bedtime story. And, you know, those kind of conversations that we had were just not aligning. And I also felt like he was not ready for a relationship, because when, you know, things happen between the kids, me and the pregnancy, he was just not like involved. So I was just like, you know what? I think it's best if we just go our separate ways. So
during that time, you know, you leave high school, you have these babies. Mm-hmm. What did you go to school?
I dropped out.
You dropped out?
Yeah.
And what was your outlook like? Because now you have a really successful business. But you know, I know for myself, especially having gone through this first year, that hey, you know, you're going to learn a lot about what you don't want to do.
Yeah.
You know, so obviously it wasn't your first try that you got the cleaning business. What other avenues what kind of work did you do?
When I had my kids, I was working in the restaurant industry.
Me too. I worked in there forever.
You did? Yeah. I love the restaurant. Like, when I go to a restaurant, I love seeing like the movement, because the kitchen is chaos.
Yeah.
And the kitchen was always chaos. And I just love, like, I work really good under pressure. And I think that's my childhood trauma came in handy, because, you know, Mexican moms like, clean this, clean that, hurry up. And so we're all like in chaos all the time. And so working under pressure in the restaurant was easy. I was like slanging plates and taking orders like nothing. It was just really cool. But feeling like there's pressure, and having the pressure of the kids, and having the pressure of like, they're relying on me to have a roof over their heads, and their doctors and this and that, like having that pressure, I feel like my family and my mom built that pressure, and it's a good pressure at certain points, right? Because it builds character. Yeah. So if you're a parent and you're listening to this and you're like, maybe I'm being too tough on my child, let me tell you, those kids are going to grow up with tenacity, and they're going to grow up with resilience, and they're going to grow up with endurance, because they're going to know my mom was hard as shit. Like, this is nothing. Like, you kind of like you don't live without the chaos, to a point where when you are in chaos and under pressure with deadlines and stuff that you got to do. And I'm sure you understand this, because your parents
understand this.
Because your parents were very pressuring to a point where it was like, come on, Adam, get the grades. Come on, let's go. Yeah. Like clockwork. So it's that pressure builds you to a high degree of character that you're just unstoppable.
See, it's funny, because I think the pressure that I got working in restaurants was more beneficial than any pressure that I ever got from my family, because the way my dynamic worked was, you know, when I started to drink, you know, at that point, you know, like my viewers already know this. Like, I found out I was adopted.
How old were you?
What?
How old were you when you started to drink?
13.
Okay.
So when I started to drink, it was shortly after, I've talked about this a lot on the podcast. It was shortly after me and my sister found out we were adopted. Oh. So when I found out we were adopted, I kind of exploded and rebelled. And I also knew that I could hold my parents hostage, and because they felt guilty. Yeah. And I could do whatever I wanted. Yeah. So in order to not face that, you know, I just started partying and getting in trouble and making poor decisions and getting arrested and all of that, you know, and I jumped into the restaurant industry. And the one thing I always say about the restaurant industry, it's great, but not for this guy. because, you know, I drink like an alcoholic.
Yeah.
I party like an.
But were you a functioning alcoholic?
I told myself I was. from the outside perspective.
I lied to myself.
More than likely not. I think any spectators would say otherwise.
Yeah.
But regardless, like, the one thing the restaurant industry did give me was that being able to work under pressure, like you talked about.
Discipline.
Being able to multitask. Being able to deal with people. Being able to communicate. Being able to sell.
Can I just stop you right there?
Yeah.
People are people. People don't think that people are people, but people that work with people will know that people just people.
They're just people, yeah.
Yeah.
And it's crazy because I was talking about this to my Christmas Eve guest, Mike, and because I met him working in a restaurant, and I believe that everyone should work in a restaurant for a year.
Yep.
Just
so you can deal with people because people lack people skills. And if you're trying to run any kind of business successfully, you're going to need people.
Yeah. And you know, it's funny because people are particular about their money, they're particular about their food, and they're particular about their faith.
Especially about their food.
Especially about their food. And
the tantrums that they would throw because their food was a certain temperature, I was like baffled, but you almost have to learn how to like talk to them and calm them down and diffuse the situation. And one thing I loved about the restaurant industry, maybe you can agree with me, is the deal of negotiation. The art of negotiating with the customer when they're upset. And diffuse the situation. You're negotiating, basically. It's like talking someone down from jumping a bridge.
Yeah.
You're negotiating. You know, they have master negotiators in the FBI when someone's trying to like suicide, right?
Yeah.
So like you're diffusing a situation and you're talking
conflict resolution.
Yeah. And you're trying to calm them down and you're trying to resolve the conflict so that people skills is more than just interacting and connecting and building relationships, which is something that Rob Tracy had us do, like build the relationships. But to me, it's like the art of negotiation. So many people leave so much money on the table because they don't know how to negotiate. And that's one of my favorite things to do.
Well, it's so funny that you're saying it like that, because I always, when I jumped into a sales career, and I shared this on the last episode, when people would ask me, oh, like, why is your past relevant restaurant experience, how's it going to help you? And I'm like, listen, like, a tip's a commission.
Yeah.
Determined by how well I do my job.
Yeah.
And that's exactly what you guys want me to do, correct? Mm-hmm. So, you know, when I got them to look at it, because people don't look at it that way. No. People look at it, and, you know, I've watched people, because when I go to a restaurant, I watch people.
You people watch.
People watch the shit out of everyone. Right? And I see the asshole like treating his server poorly. You know what? The one thing that, because I worked in like upscale steakhouses for a very long time, and the one thing I always notice at
wealthy
steakhouses,
people watching is awesome.
Wealthy people watching is wild. They're wild. But the one thing I always notice is when they don't mark the table with steak knives, and it's like a little thing, but it's so funny. Like I always notice when like a steak drops and there's like a
when they have
like, and they never put the steak knife down, because that was something one of my managers was so particular about for a long time. But it for me, I think what that helped me with was attention to detail when it comes to other things.
Yeah.
You know, because that's important. But I also, one thing I took away from working in the restaurant industry is a lot of the times people don't know you made a mistake until you make it clear to them that you made a mistake. Yeah. When you over apologize, you know, rather than just resolve the situation, and that's that. Mm-hmm. And that's something like I take to in my professional life too. And I think also taking responsibility for the mistake that you made. If you didn't know you made it, or you weren't aware that you made it, and the customer catches you and says, hey, this and this. Own it. Yeah, own it. Because I've seen a lot of people avoid the conflict and no, I didn't do it. It's like argue back. Yeah. And it's like, first of all, the customer is not always right, but the customer deserves a right of way. So one of my friends told me, you are the queen if you have the money. The moment that they take your money, you're no longer the queen, you're the pawn. I said, okay. He said, and so if you look at it that way, you stop spending money dumb money just down the drain and doing Amazon shopping and drop shipping and all this other stuff that people like to do with their money, because they use it, they fumble it, and then they're scrambling. So when you look at the money that way, that you are the queen and they're the pawns and they want your money, you know, you stop being the pawn, you stop overspending on dumb stuff, but you also learn
that the other person is a queen, therefore you should treat them right all the time, even when they give you the money, right? Because it's a customer transaction relationship. But it's one of those things where if you start bickering with a customer, well, you shouldn't have done this and you shouldn't have gotten a refill. Like, you know, it's
a bad look.
Well, first of all, what are you doing?
Yeah.
What are you doing?
Totally. And I had like catty coworkers like that, but you know, I just was distanced myself from that. And for the most part, you know, I remember one of the first times I jumped into the service industry and I was in this interview and the guy's like, but you're building a business. And I was like, what do you mean? Like, I'm not building a business, but I am, you know, and prevalent in the fact that, you know, I had regulars coming in and, you know, that's really the first taste of just like understanding like how to build a business and how to have people loyal to you and you as a brand, essentially, where you're getting requests and you're getting 40% rather than 20%.
Yeah, and people are requesting you.
Yeah. You know, they're not requesting the food. They already know what they're going to get.
Yeah.
But, you know, as you worked in the restaurant industry, I'm going to go back to you. Yeah. You obviously left it.
Yeah. So
what was that transition like? And did you remain in the service industry?
So I was, I want to touch on a point that you said there with the restaurant. The restaurant industry does teach you to personal brand yourself and it teaches you attention to detail. So all these things are skills. People are like, well, maybe you're listening to this and you're working at a Burger King. Maybe you're working at a steakhouse. Maybe you are working with customer service. As long as you're working with people and you learn to be the best customer service, the best Burger King server, the best steakhouse, the best at your role, you're going to gain the maximum amount of skills because you're not just building the tenacity and the discipline to be there and to be sharp and to look sharp and to deal with people and conflict resolute and all of this stuff, but you're also learning to brand yourself. And when you go to another job, like when I left the restaurant industry, I went into being a bartender and I had to deal with drunk people now. So it's like a different level of just dealing with people.
Oh, I feel you.
It's drunk people. And you have to learn to entertain at that point because you're not just dealing with people and one-on-one food, but now it's like, I want you to leave me a big tip because I'm a bartender. So I'm going to entertain you and you have to gain charisma.
Yeah.
And so that's where my personality started to develop a lot more because I jumped into being a bartender, but I also became a stripper.
Okay.
So I stripped from when I was like 19 to 25. And that was an interesting time in my life because I had to, like I said, I get my charisma and my personality. And that's where the self-confidence, which is the last piece of your wholeness comes. Because if you have no self-confidence, you can't talk to people. You can't have charisma. You can't do nothing. You're basically like paralyzed because you might be a really great person on the inside, but if you're not willing to go out there and put yourself out there, you're never going to make money. Just like the stripping industry, people think that it rains money in there. Like you have to actually go build relationships with the customers and sit down and talk to them and entertain them so that they can feel like, you are worthy of my money.
Yeah.
Like I said, queen and pond.
Well, I mean, being like a master salesperson that you are now, I'm sure you were successful in that. But when you made the decision to become a stripper, right? This still stems back to what you led with, being a survivor. Yeah. You wanted to take care of your twins. Yeah. And what was that decision like?
Choosing to strip. I had gotten to my...
Because you also came from a traditional family. That's why.
No. Yeah. That was a big, huge bomb on my family. I never told them I stripped until later down the road. They were like, well, how are you making all this money? Yeah. You know, because I got out of my shitty apartment. I flexed my hair. I got out of my shitty apartment. I got out of the hood. I dropped a lot of the bad habits that I had from being a money hoarder and like, because I remember sitting down at my kitchen table and I like to say this story because people are like, what the fuck? Like, that's how I kind of knew I had to become an investor and a business owner because I remember cashing both of my checks. I had 2 jobs, working morning, 6 a.m. And I had just gone back to school. So I was juggling 2 jobs, going back to school, being in fitness because I started working out and I had my kids. And I remember sitting there at my kitchen table, counting both of my checks. It's like $398 and $274. And my rent was like $700. They had just raised it to $700 and it was a $500 rent. So I was like, what the hell? Like, how am I going to pay this rent? Yeah. And so I'm thinking like, and I was counting all my money and then I couldn't afford either. I paid my rent or I bought shampoo. And I said, wait a minute, something is not mathing here. Like, it ain't mathing. Like, the math is not mathing. So I counted like my hours and the amount of money I made, and about every week, how much I could make the max and the lowest. And I was like, how am I ever going to become a millionaire? And that's when I realized at like 18, I was like, this is not going to work.
Yeah.
So I said, maybe I should get a third job, but who's going to take care of the twins? That's going to be more money, right? So I was just like going in circles, and I said, how the fuck do the rich get richer? And I started like wanting to learn more, and I heard about investing. And I every rich customer that would walk into the door.
Was this like after you started?
No, before I started stripping.
This is before you started stripping.
Yeah.
Okay. So you heard about investing.
I heard about investing, and I would ask my customers at the restaurant, like, hey, how do you, because I'm looking at, and they were just like, well, invest your money. That's what they will always say. And one day I asked, what do you mean by investing? They're like, when your money makes you money, even though you're not working. And one of the customers explained to me very well. He had a horse ranch, and he was like, look, this is what you got to do. Da, 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 da. And so I was like, bet. And I was still working in a very low paying job with kids. So I said, you know what?
Because you need to have money to invest and survive.
Yeah. And so when my rent was up, they put an eviction notice on my door because I wasn't paying it on time. And I said, I'll do whatever the hell it takes to get out of this rat race. And I remember just going to, because my babysitter was like, one of my other customers works at the strip club, and she waitresses, and she gets paid really well. She goes, you're not ugly, you're just fat.
She said, your babysitter said that?
Yeah, she said, you're not ugly, you're just fat. And this was my sister's mother-in-law. So I was like, bitch.
Yo, that's wild.
Yeah, and I was fat. I was working in a Mexican restaurant all day. So I was kind of like, I was fat.
Arroz con pollo, I get it.
Arroz con pollo, tortillas de harina, the whole shebang. So yeah, she was honest. And I feel like that saved me. Because when I went down there, they were like, have you ever stripped? And I was like, no. They were like, okay, well, we can't, because I was going to go for a waitressing. And they asked me, have you ever stripped? And I was like, no. They're like, well, it pays a lot more than waitressing. I was like, really? And he's like, if you want to take a look, we could teach you like what they do, and then you can apply. I was like, sure. So I sat at the bar.
Just watched.
All chunky and like, with my sweater, just looking at the girls like a creep. And I'm just looking at these majestic creatures with their luscious hair and their bodies. And I'm like, oh, fuck. But I was thinking like my kids.
Yeah.
And I said, sure, I'll apply.
Okay.
And I just did it. And I walked in there, and first night I made $30. And then they told me, oh, it's okay, it'll get better. And it was a feeling of...
this is in Dallas?
This is in Laredo.
Laredo, okay.
Really small town. I was feeling a little weird because I was, getting naked in front of people. I didn't know.
Yeah.
And it was just a really weird situation where certain areas, certain towns, cities have different regulations when it comes to stripping. So some of them ask you to be in just a G, or some of them ask you to be fully painted. They paint you with latex. Some of them just want you to wear a booty short. So in that town, it was minimal clothing.
Yeah.
So I was feeling so weird. I would sweat and shake, and I had to like learn to survive in the strip club because it was cutthroat.
Yeah. I mean,
girls are ruthless.
There was a period of my life, and it was when I tried to get sober one time. Mm-hmm. This was maybe when I was like 22, 23, right? And I got sober. And I was one of those people who would get sober and find another addiction. And I became addicted to strip clubs. And
I don't blame you.
I would go to them all the time, and I would sit there and I'd order a cranberry juice, and I would never get a dance, but I would just watch because I was very shy. I was very coy, and I was just like, all right. And sometimes my boys would come with me and they would do their thing. But yeah, I would just like go to this one strip club in my town. It's no longer open. And I would sit there at the bar and drink cranberry juice.
I don't advocate for strip clubs,
but I would people watch.
Yeah. I don't advocate for them, but go ahead, finish.
But the girls knew that I was like harmless and kind of bitch, just sitting there with cranberry juice. You know what I mean? So they would just like talk to me, and they would like tell me all these things about these regulars. And then like, it was crazy. Yeah. And the things that were said to them, and just like the disrespect that they were, not victim, but like, the disrespect that they were getting.
Oh, you are victimized by a lot of creeps.
Yeah.
You are. It's a true thing.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I don't blame you for being a strip club addict.
I did that for like, I don't know, maybe like 3 months, 4 months. And then I was like, vodka cramming, let's do it.
Because the girls are so like, they're humans.
Yeah.
They all talk to you. Well, not all of them, but like they'll talk to you. They'll hang out with you. They see you coming often. Like you'll make friends there. The music is they got bangers all the time.
Yeah.
They got steak and fries.
Yeah.
They got the cranberry juice. They got all kinds of juices. They got gin and juice. I mean, it's a really like, I'm not saying it's people should go to a strip club because, I don't go there because I get PTSD.
Yeah.
But when I used to go, like, my memories of going was like, I don't blame you for being there. Because it's a getaway for men.
It's gratification. It's that serotonin that you're chasing at the end of the day.
Yeah.
And it's also that fantasy and that false hope.
Yeah, that everyone likes you because you're a guy and that your insecurities don't really matter at the door because, as shady as it sounds, women there are just there for your money. So if you've ever caught your boyfriend at a strip club and you're like, these girls are going to take my man, trust me, they don't want your man. They want his money. And everyone is cute and handsome and amazing and the sweetest and they smell amazing.
It's so funny you say that.
Because that's so true. That's their game.
I had this one friend who fell in love with a stripper every time. And I was like, dude, she does not interested, bro. Like, he'd be like, no, rare. Man, like we really can. No, you didn't.
It's very rare when a stripper and a customer connect because like, think about it. There's about 200 men walking in that door. Yeah. She'll probably connect with like 50 more.
Yeah.
And she might really like you, but she's going to want you to like supply for her needs. And her needs are expensive because these girls are making, if you're a good stripper that doesn't have an extra job, because there were strippers that had jobs. It's like, girl, get out of here. Like, just keep, like, I have a job, but I'm a stripper. I was like, you're not a stripper then. Because a stripper is a hustler.
Yeah.
And so the girls that were making money there, I was like, you can make 10K in a day.
That's wild.
Just sitting there with the oil guys. Yeah.
That's
Houston was our place, by the way.
The oil guys?
Yeah.
Yo,
Pasadena.
That's wild.
Yeah, it is.
But I've seen it because it's funny. This is such a random conversation. I had a friend who managed a strip club in Vegas.
Yeah. Oh, really?
Yeah. He managed either like the Hustler or something.
I never worked in Vegas and I saw.
They would throw private parties, and a lot of the times they'd be like Saudi people, and they'd come in with their briefcases handcuffed to them, just full of cash. And he was like, "Yo, at the end of the party, you couldn't see the carpet. It was just straight hundreds everywhere, and girls would come there and make something like 40 grand in one night,
30 bands,
then maybe come back like 3 months later.
Yeah, but these girls are like 100% like body done, hair done, everything done. So
I want to kind of get back on track, because.
Well, we're not, I say that because we don't want to like fantasize anyone into going applying for a strip club and saying, Maria did it, so I can too. Like, and I'm not advocating for none of that, but I'm saying that these are really unrealistic expectations of people going into strip clubs. And
well, I think it's just like
try at your own risk.
I think it just kind of runs in line with the theme of your story, which is survival.
Yeah, it's survival.
And you were willing to support your family at whatever cost and elevate yourself to a place where you're in a way to invest at any cost. And frankly, I think there's a lot of men out there, if they had that option, they would do it too.
Yeah.
Men just can't.
They can. They have OnlyFans.
Well, let's not go there.
That's a different story.
Either way, obviously there's a psychological toll that job takes on you.
Oh yeah.
And at that time you, according to like from your timetable, it's like there were things that you had unresolved from your childhood. Now you're a mother. Mm-hmm. Now you're stressed out about money, and now you're in this place where
my looks matter, and that's all. That's
all. Mm-hmm. We talked a little bit about, addiction, alcoholism, and your disease.
Yeah.
How has this tracking throughout this period of time?
Well, it was like I don't know. I'm trying to think back because when you're going through trauma, you kind of block it out of your brain and you don't want to think about that. But if we're being honest, I try to block it off as much as I can because I feel ashamed of those feelings of actually taking pleasure in being a stripper, because it was more like physical pleasure in the sense of like ego. Because, I'm striving, I'm making a hell of a lot of money, and I am 19, I'm young, I got my whole life ahead of me. I'm bringing my kids up and I'm rising from the ashes like a phoenix. Right. And so the ego is there. With the alcohol, oh God, it was unstoppable. And so I start reaching these levels where I'm just making money and I'm like up leveling and like taking my kids out on vacations and we're traveling and they're getting to see the world. And I guess my grounding was, knowing that, because the ego is there, right? The ego is always going to be there. And I didn't know that my ego was there as big until I kind of like reflect on it. But I remember being in that state of nothing matters but my kids. And so the way that I would ground myself was remembering that I'm doing this for them and that this is just a stepping stone, because there were times that it took a lot of emotional toll on me. Like I had to come to the idea that I was never going to be able to have a relationship as long as I was a stripper. So that means sacrificing myself for the better and the future of my kids. And as long as I always had that present, I kind of like stuck to the path of, this is just a stepping stone. Don't get too carried away. Don't go make 40, 50 bands because you're going to get used to that kind of money and you're never, ever going to leave. Yeah. And it was hard enough, like leaving with the kind of money that I was making, like to just go and, go all in, all to that route. Because there are routes down in the stripping world, like prostitution and all that stuff, where once you start making crazy amounts of money, it's so hard to get out of it.
But I guess my question is like, was any of it motivated by the fact that you were seen for the first time? I mean, because, you talked about how like, either you're bullied or you were the bully or you were in the middle. Yeah. And you talked about isolating and going to your room and reading these magazines and seeing these beautiful women and seeing the attention they got. And when you were in the strip club world, was any of it also just like that validation? It was like, I'm being seen, I'm being noticed. Have you ever thought about that?
Yeah. Oh yeah. It makes an addiction where a lot of women, they got married after the strip club and they got married from someone that rescued them from the strip club, and they would go back and strip for the fuck of it. And I was like, why are you here? You're married, you have a house. Like, why are you here? Yeah. They're like, I just like the attention. Yeah. And so that was like something that I was like made aware. I was like, huh. So when I left, I did feel like I was not seen. I felt like not that my looks didn't matter, but it was like I dressed more provocatively in public because I felt so comfortable with my body that it was just like, oh, like, look at me. And then I got to a point where I realized like, I want to change my life into being a business owner and an investor. And this whole idea of how I see myself is not going to help. Yeah. So I need to change the way I dress because that's how people perceive me. And that's how I need to be seen to the world. So it does create a sense of like, I'm being seen. And then you get out of it and you're no longer being seen. You're invisible to the world because you're just a regular schmegular girl. And you can't take your clothes off in public, right? Yeah. I'm not saying I never thought about that, but like, it was just weird, like getting out of that. And I had a distorted version of the world at that point. Yeah. I hated men. You're
26 and it's kind of like, if I knew what I knew now at 26, it'd be a very different line of decisions that I made. So when you get out now, you're looking to become an investor, you're looking to start a business. And where during your story did you also realize that, hey, like I need to stop drinking?
When I got out of the strip club and I wanted to change my life for the better. And cause I got to a point where
Did you hit a bottom?
Oh yeah. I hit a bottom when I left the strip club because in 2018, I was drinking a lot. I was actually kicked out of the strip club because I was too fat. So I was working night shift, and the way that my strip club worked was like, if you don't have your hair done, your nails done, you can't work here. And if you're not ready, if you don't walk in ready, you can't work here. If you can't afford to get your nails done and your hair done and your makeup, you can't work here because we don't like girls that look like shit, basically. Yeah. And they would only choose you because of your looks. And I remember working there in the afternoon, like 6 to like 2. And one day the manager was like, you can't come back because you're fat. He goes, if you lose 10 pounds in 3 months, we can have you back in the afternoon shift. But other than that, you're gonna have to work the morning shift. And there was other strip clubs in my area where I just didn't want to go work because it was very, people were getting shot at kind of thing. So I said, you know what? I'm going to work the morning shift, but I was too fat to work at the night shift. And
what did that do to you when he said that? And like, was that when you left?
well, it changed my perspective on how I looked at myself. I stopped drinking because of that, because I hit rock bottom to where I was too fat to kick me out. And so then I had to stop drinking to lose the weight. And in that transition, like in that journey, I joined like this fitness challenge, changed my life. And that's when I, like later that year, like I completely left the strip club for good. I got my certification with my...
It's like 2019-ish?
2019, the beginning, like January. Well, in 2018, they kicked me out. So I started working 1 month in the morning shift, but that was very eye-opening because I saw the girls that were doing things for money.
Yeah.
And nobody wanted to get a dance.
Yeah.
They wanted other things.
Yeah.
And so that's where I saw like my life just kind of like flash on my face.
Yeah, like this
is it. This is where you're going to end up.
Yeah.
And the girls there were like 30, 35, and that's considered old in the strip club industry.
Yeah.
And that's where I saw my life headed. And I said, you know what? I need to get out. And that's when I stopped drinking because I said, I need to better myself.
Was it a conscious decision to stop drinking where it was just like, also it's causing problems in my life? Or is it just you wanted to lose weight?
Well, it was a compilation of all of them.
Yeah.
I wanted to lose weight, but I also saw I hated drinking because I was drinking all day. Like I would get there like at 10. And in order for me to get in the mood that early in the day to deal with men, it was like I needed to drink.
Yeah.
And these were not just like regular men. It was men like that were creeps and weirdos. And
I mean, I can only imagine the day crowd.
Yeah. The day crowd was really like older men and just really great, not great intentions, just weird. And so I was drinking all day. I would get out of work like at 6 and I would go drink even more to 2 a.m. So that's when I was like, you know what? I need to stop.
Yeah.
So I joined the challenge and they said no alcohol. So I was like, okay, great. It was a 12-week challenge, I think. 8-week, 12-week. And I stopped drinking for those. And that's when I saw like my potential. And I was like, oh, hell no, I'm never going back. So I, when I graduated from my certification, all that stuff, I was still in the transition of like stopping the drinking, and then I would relapse, and then stopping the drinking, and then I would relapse until 2022 when I made the conscious decision of like, no more.
When did you kind of sit down and just face yourself?
When did I sit down and face myself as to...
Just like everything, because the woman that you're describing, like everything that you've been through and even like from your childhood, you kind of glow now, and you have a very different energy to you where it's powerful and inspiring. And there had to have been some sort of shift where you kind of put everything on the table and started to deal with the certain things. I mean, you did talk about getting the coach in 2022. So I really want to kind of lean into the healing journey.
Yeah. The healing journey was kind of like slowly progressing. It was a long transition from like then till now. But I want to say like, when I started to see like, I kind of like reflect and take a look back was when I was hitting my rock bottom. I was sitting in my car outside of the strip club and I didn't want to go inside. I was crying. I was crying in my car. I was like, I don't want to go inside. And I said, what do I need to do in order to get out of this place? Because I need the money, but I can't just stop. And at this point I was still drinking. And then that's when they kicked me out. They were like, yeah, you can't work here. So I think that's when God heard my prayers and he was like, all right, you don't want this? I think you're ready. Because I did try to quit before. Like when I was stripping, I did try to quit. And I tried to like leave the alcohol. But I would always relapse and always fall back into that job. And so I would quit, go back to working at a restaurant. I wasn't making enough money at all. So I would relapse again and go back to stripping. So the journey was like, I was facing myself like with wanting to change, but it wasn't my timing, Adam. It was God's timing.
Yeah.
So when he was like, it's time to go, that's when he put all these roadblocks. And I think when people get stuck in the journey is when they don't know how to pivot on those roadblocks and jump over the hoops that God is telling you, like, look at a different avenue, look at a different road. And they hit this dead end. Instead of making a way, they get stuck. Yeah. So in 2022, when I started healing like emotionally was, I hit rock bottom. Because of my addictions. Yeah,
I like what you said about God putting roadblocks. And I believe that. I also believe a little bit is me. It's like allowing God to like recognizing that God's putting roadblocks. Yeah. Because I think in my journey, there's just been so many times where God put roadblocks and I just hopped right over them, but
some are taller than the rest.
Some are taller than the rest, but if I want it, I'm jumping high.
Yeah.
You know, and for a long time, like the roadblocks kept getting higher and higher, and I kept jumping higher and higher, which made the fall even harder.
Yeah.
And when you live life like that and you ignore those roadblocks, and now it's like my perspective has completely shifted where, you know, rather than operating out of ego, because you talked about that earlier, my ego and my best thinking just like doesn't work.
Yeah.
You know, a lot of the times, like if my eyes are open, I'm looking for the signs, and you know, they appear. You know, one of the things for me, it's like this year has been extremely challenging where, you know, I'm not in this place where I've built up the monthly recurring revenue. There has been like this period of uncertainty. And I also know it's the setbacks of being in business for the first year.
Oh yeah. The first year are brutal.
The first couple of years are brutal from what I hear, but now it's like having that presence of mind of just like knowing where to lean into and where to take some energy out of, is going to promise a good year ahead. I want to talk about you as a businesswoman.
Yeah.
Because that's how I first met you.
Yeah.
On that stage, sharing this intimate story that you just shared. And I was blown away with the way you commanded the room, because it was just like a beautiful thing to watch, especially like after you laid out your story.
Thank you.
What were the first things? Because, you know, the theme of the podcast is finding purpose.
Yeah.
And you have these stories and the obstacles that define who you are. What was that moment when you were like, all right, like this is my purpose. This is what I was destined to do.
Business owner. I always knew I wanted to be a business owner. I just didn't know how I was going to get there. I thought I was going to own a restaurant. I thought that was going to be my purpose, like having a restaurant. But the way that my paradigm was shifted was, you know, I always saw myself being a business owner in a suit and dressing really nice. And, you know, it was driven more like I want to call the shots because I've never had the shots. I've always been like the little one, the underdog. My sisters are all like, you know, the bigger ones, and I'm the small one, and they get to squish me like an ant. That's what I felt like.
Yeah.
And when I got my confidence through, you know, my trials and tribulations, being a business owner, when I became a business owner, I thought I knew it all. I was like, yay, I'm a business owner. And it kind of, God has a plan for all of us, Adam. I could say, I'm going to be an investor and I'm going to do this and this. God is not going to let you in that door. He's going to stand there like a guard dog, and he's going to say, nope, nope, nope. And you're going to try to jump this way, this way, this way. He's going to say, nope, that's not it. Say the magic word.
How did it start, your business?
The cleaning business? I was engaged and I moved to Dallas because I was living in San Antonio. I hit rock bottom.
Yeah.
And I was drinking a lot. And I said that I've become the bigger pond in the fish. Everywhere I go, are people like me, and I know more than them, and I hate this shit because I want to grow. And I was speaking like, you know, I was speaking to stages, but I was like, what's the next level? What's the next level? Like, what is the next level of this whole thing? Because, you know, when you're speaking on stage and you're speaking with someone like,
how did you get into the speaking?
Well, I had a coach in San Antonio, and and he helped me a lot with my opportunities for speaking. So I owe him that much. The effort, you know, obviously, like I had to put it, but it was one of those things where I was networking. He invited me to his speaking boot camp. I joined it. They saw I had a great story. I didn't even know that being a stripper was a great story until they were like, wait, that's wait, what?
Yeah.
So they were like, you should talk about that story more. And I started.
Was it difficult at first?
It was what?
Was it difficult at first?
Speaking
about your story, like talking about it, I mean, the reason why I'm asking is because one of the most difficult things for me when it came to speaking was, talking about things I'd never talked about before in a public forum, whether it was my drinking, whether it was the fact that I found out I was adopted, whether it was, my family to a certain extent, and just how different I felt. That scared the shit out of me. Which is why
rightfully so.
Yeah.
Rightfully so.
And because I always felt that like people would look at me differently or I'd be judged or no one cared.
That's true. That's true. And those feelings are valid.
Yeah.
I did feel a little weird about talking about being a stripper because people were just going to think like, they were just going to see me with those eyes. Like she's just a hustler, right? When I meant so much more. So it's kind of like you're being seen physically, but you're not being seen for who you are. So I'm still not being seen.
Were you like afraid that people wouldn't take you seriously?
Yeah. Of course. Because they didn't. They were like, Some of them did. They were like, oh, okay. But then there was those people that they had other intentions. Like, oh, she was a stripper. Maybe I can, lure her in and say, you want to speak on my stage? Yeah. And I was like, no. Yeah. So, So it was just kind of like, hey, you want candy? I have candy in back of van type of thing. Yeah. And so it was a little tough to talk about those things.
Like they labeled you as A-type.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think that, just going back to the question, which was, I forgot what was the question.
The question was it difficult for you to speak about your story in such detail like you just did now? At first.
At first it was.
Yeah.
You don't want to be judged. You don't want people to kind of see you with different eyes, but they're going to do what they're going to do and you're going to do what you have to do.
Yeah. I love that.
And it's all about survival.
Totally.
So and one thing I learned about speaking, which a lot of people don't talk about, is that when a speaker goes out there and talks from the heart and like really polishes their speech and their words and their image and their presence and their tone and everything, the audience will connect with you.
Yeah.
And you can have all the money in the world. You can build like a 9-figure company, but if you don't have the power to connect with people and like really connect with the audience, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter.
I love that because that like stems, like it's tying everything together because when you were talking about the relationships that we talked about, that we harnessed in the service industry, the hustling skills that you acquired when you were stripping, and now you're putting it all together with a message from speaking, and you've built a business. Yeah. What have been some of the toughest parts of building your business, and what have been the biggest rewards? You can start with the toughest parts.
Cleaning business, I fell into it. Remember that? Like I moved to Dallas, was going to get married, didn't work out. The house where we were living at, I didn't know I was going to build the business at all. Like that was a thing. I didn't know I was going to build the business. When we moved to Dallas, we were living Dallas is a ginormous city, but we were living in a suburb, which is 30 minutes north.
Which one?
Providence Village.
Okay.
It's on 380. If anybody is from Dallas listening to this podcast, they're going to know that 380 is a freaking nightmare. Don't ever move past 380. Stay under 380 because 380 is like 2 roads, one coming, one going. They expanded it, but now it's construction, so it's everywhere. And we were up there and we didn't know how bad it was going to be until we moved up there and we were stuck in a 5-bedroom house. So we get a 5-bedroom house. Everything's great. The house is disgustingly dirty. There's baby teeth on the windowsills. It was just disgusting. Like 7 years of not cleaning it. And so the owner, I tell her, can you please send someone over? We need to clean because it was supposed to be move-in ready. Yeah. Full disclosure, no property is ever going to be move-in ready until we clean it. Okay. Just know that.
Love that. Little marketing.
Thank you.
There you go.
So we get to the business, right? And I tell her, I'll clean it because you're not cleaning it. So I clean it. She sends companies, but they never showed up. So I clean it. And then at this point we separate because he's like, I'm not ready. I'm going back to San Antonio. Yeah. So he leaves and I have to pay my portion, which was like a lot of money. And I'm thinking like my fitness business is not taking off as I wanted it because I left all my in-person clients over there. Yeah. So my number one, I would say like problem was figuring out like how to price it because it was time. Yeah. Like my skills, my time being exchanged again for this, but how much do I know I'm worth? So like having to decide how much do I want to price these houses at without overpricing them and looking like a newbie, but also not falling short. And so these things were like, that was my one-on-one problem, like pricing. And I would say we did market research. So market research was like my number one problem because I didn't know how to do market research. Yeah. And
did you have someone help you with that?
No, I had to figure it out on my own. So I was calling companies and asking them how much they would charge me for certain cleanings that I was going to do that they asked me to do, which was like Airbnbs. And they were like, we're going to charge you this much. So gathering all that information and putting it down and saying, okay, this is my price point. This is what I feel comfortable with. and then figuring out my numbers.
Yeah.
That was my second problem because I was charging a house, but I wasn't aware that I had to add like overhead, like taxes, workers' comp insurance. It was me, commercial insurance for my car because it wasn't just a regular car anymore. It was a commercial car because I had cleaning products and cleaning stuff in there.
Yeah.
So like the numbers part was a huge problem for me that I had to learn how to solve because otherwise I would be just falling even or negative. And so if I wanted to hire help, I was looking into the future. I was like, if I want to hire help, if I lock her in for this rate, I'm not going to be able to unlock her from that rate because I'm going to lose her. So I need to learn how to price that and then charge that. And then when I get employees, they're going to pay for themselves and I'm not going to have to upsell her on something else. So like the numbers, market research, it was like figuring out employees. Right now we're in the process of like building a team and employees development, all that stuff. I think that is the next challenge.
And you have 2 10-year-olds.
Yeah, at this point I have 2 10-year-olds. So it was just like a lot.
Yeah, no, I can imagine. Where did you lean on? Like, did you have mentorship? Because I'm a huge
Brandon.
component. Really?
Yeah. Well, that later on, 6 months
Are you
after.
serious? Brandon was your business coach?
Well, Brandon was helping me with my mindset and like my business and like getting my numbers, my budget. Because when I was working with Brandon, he was doing like a promo for like 2 months and he was kind of testing out his coaching. And this was in 2022. So like November, December. And then come January, I couldn't afford him. And he was like, this is going to be my price. And I was still building like my clientele with Airbnb.
Brandon raised prices on you? Shit.
He pressed me so hard that I broke. Like I exploded because he was like, you need to, he talked to me straight. He was like, you need to do this, this, and this, and this, and this. And you still have a conference in April and you still got to do this and you got to do this. You tell me you want to do this. He goes, you're not going to make none of those if you don't get to work right now. Like, what do you got going on? And so I was like, let me call you back. I started crying. I was like,
that's how he is.
He's right. But it hit me. And I was like a bucket of like ice water. And I was like, get to work. So I started working on my Airbnb business, which I was cleaning strictly Airbnbs. That's a lot of attention to detail. Yeah. So Brandon was coaching me through those moments. And then my next coach was, after that, my next coach was Cheryl Jones. She helped me through that childhood stuff that I had going on. But she also taught me about, because if I wanted to ask for the better rates, I had to break that inner block that I had.
Well, you didn't think you were valued that? Yeah.
With money, I was not valuable. So I wouldn't ask for more money.
Yeah.
And so she helped me with that because she was still my fitness client. I still had some fitness clients online. And she was like, so how's it going? And that's when I told her. And she was like, let me coach you through that. So.
What was it like digging into that childhood work with Cheryl?
It was like nothing I've ever experienced. A lot of people think that coaching is just talking and having a therapist. She literally has some magic powers. Like, I shit you not. This is insane. Like, one time I called her, I broke down because I was being triggered by a customer. She was forcing me to stay and clean longer than I was supposed to. And that made me feel, she said something that triggered me back to an emotional trauma from my stepdad. Yeah. And I got home crying, just like I was in shambles. And she was like, what did she say that triggered you? And I said, she made this voice. And when she did that voice.
The tone of her voice?
Yeah, her tone of her voice. And it like brought me back to, I'm even sweating just thinking about it. She brought me back to the time where my stepdad would talk to me with a certain tone of voice. And he manipulated me. And I felt like she was manipulating me. And she goes, you need to break through those traumas right now because you're not going to be able to excel in business with these traumas triggering you. And I said, you're right. So
it's so true.
Yeah. So she was like, close your eyes. And then she did this thing with like her fingers and it was just like, yes, no. And then I would tell her yes. And then she would she would say, okay, I'm getting this. Is this what you went through? And I was like, yes. And then she was like, okay, do I have your permission to break that? And then she would do it like with a crystal. And it was just like a process. And if you ever coach with Cheryl, she would change your life. Trust me. Like, I thought she was a witch because she could see things that I never told her.
That's wild. I mean, yeah. I've done like trauma work also, and it's really deep, and you go in and
it's very emotional.
You're unpacking a lot. And the thing that I learned when you're doing trauma work is that sometimes there's things that you don't even know that you bottled up and they come back to the surface and you're just like oh, death. Wow, that's there. I didn't know I was holding on to that. And me, like I go to a 12-step program.
Nice.
And that's a big component of that, like unpacking the skeletons that you've been carrying in that bag over your shoulder and just like just letting go of them. Which has allowed me to kind of be more free in my communication, and sometimes almost too direct when it comes to just like how honest I am with my opinions or how I feel about something. But I don't leave really any margin of error for anyone to assume what I'm thinking anymore, because I think that was a huge problem for me. People would assume I was going to either think or react a certain way. So then they would modify their behaviors. And when I drastically adjusted that to where it's like, listen, no, this is actually how I feel. This is actually what I'm going to do. It was also like demonstrating to them that I mean what I say,
and I say
what I mean. And that's something that was so opposite of who I was. And it's hard to undo
with people that know you,
and love you.
Yeah.
30 years of doing the opposite. And then all of a sudden it's like, no, this is actually me. So, that's something that I deal with on a daily basis. I'm only
kind of like when my sisters are like, why are you like that? You're not like that.
That's like, right? I am now.
I relate to you in that point. Yeah.
And, like how have your relationships with your sister evolved now that you've, started this healing journey and you're doing this trauma work with Cheryl and you are a successful businesswoman. Talk about those, because you sound like you have a close relationship with your sisters, but you also, like they also are capable of pushing your buttons as well.
Well, I didn't talk to them from the time I started being a stripper all the way to like 2 years ago.
Okay.
Because of the same thing where I was a different person. I was crazy. Yeah. Like I was recklessly crazy. Mind you, my kids were always being taken care of, right? But when they were not with me,
did they know?
Well, they are with me, but they're with their dad, custody, like shared custody. Yeah. I was an animal. Like I was a drinker.
How much of it were they aware of?
They were my family or my kids?
Your kids.
My kids, they didn't start seeing my animal until I left the strip club. Because they would see me go out and drink and they're like,
yeah, what's mom doing?
Yeah, why are you acting weird, Yeah. And they're like growing up 7, 8 years old and they're asking me all these questions. And so I didn't talk to my sisters for a long time because I was just a crazy animal that liked to isolate herself from them.
Yeah.
I started healing in 2022. I called them back and we created a relationship again. So now they look at me like I'm a stranger. They're like, you weren't like this. Yeah, you changed drastically. Like, what the hell? Who are you?
In a good way, though.
In a good way, but now I'm too intense for them. Because I'm even with like my boyfriend, I'm like, hey, let's go. Come on, read that book. Throw your phone away. Like I'm like, throw away your, right, baby? I was like, leave your phone alone. Read this book. Come on, it's been 3 months. And like, but I'm too intense to a point where I want to see you succeed and I want to see you win and I know what's good for you. Yeah. So that's why they see me that they're like, you're a little weird.
Well, I mean, they say that you're too intense. I say that you're just more intentional.
Yeah.
And,
that's a good one.
It's true. It's like, I wasn't intentional in anything that I did. Mm-hmm. So now that I'm way more intentional in the things that I do, it's hard for the people who are so used to me being lackadaisical or volatile or annoying, frankly. And yeah, take that to your sisters. Tell them that. I want to talk about purpose a little bit because, obviously that's the theme of the podcast. Yeah. And I love that you've really, goddamn, like this is like the first real conversation we ever had. And thank you so much for trusting me and my audience, obviously, with just a very vulnerable, transparent story. But I want to talk about purpose to you.
Yeah.
What does purpose mean to you? And through your journey to finally living your purpose that you are doing now, what are the biggest lessons you've learned?
Purpose. I don't think I call it purpose. I call it like my life mission, my existence. What is the meaning of my existence? Right. It might be the same purpose, but I think what's my life mission? What is my role in this world? Like why? Because you're a human, I'm a human. And if anyone's ever thought about this, I started thinking about how we're just nothing in the middle of nowhere in a rock surviving with oxygen. Right. Like there's galaxies and galaxies and we're just a piece of atoms and molecules in a piece of land. And we're just this is all an illusion.
Yeah.
Society, beliefs, culture, everything. It's an illusion. So what is my purpose? Because I'm going to die. You're going to die. He's going to die. We're all going to die. What is our purpose? And I think that the purpose that I chose for myself was leaving things better than I found them, making it so memorable for my family to break those generational curses, right? Because generations down the road, they're not going to know me. They're not going to know who was Maria. That was my great, great, great grandma. But I want them to know like, hey, our great, great, great grandma built something for herself. And so that's why we're here. That's why we're the Rockefellers right now, bitch. Because we came from someone that struggled and fought and they have speeches on her talking, and I'm going to be the Martin Luther King of my family. And that's going to be amazing because they're going to look back and say, she was wild, but she lived the life that she always wanted without any regrets. And the regret that I don't want to have is in my deathbed when I'm thinking like, I should have, would have, and I could have, but I didn't. And that's, I think, my purpose. My purpose is to break those generational patterns of curses and poverty. I don't want my family to be poor. I want my great grandkids to be balling like Paris Hilton.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
I love that. Like, that's beautiful. And it's so funny because you're only 30 years old, and I really like the knowledge and the wisdom and the life that you've already lived. And you said that earlier. It's like when I was 13, I was contemplating all these things that you don't think about when you're 13. Like, you're forced to grow up fast, and God, you've harnessed all of those. I don't even know what to call them. Just like
if
that.
You think about it, 15, it's been 17 years of my journey.
Yeah.
17 years.
It's what a lot. I mean, it's awesome. It really is. It really is awesome. And I'm blown away, and I'm hopeful to come down to Dallas one day and spend some time with you guys. I went to Dallas last year for a Cowboys game. I'm a big Eagles fan.
What happened? Did they lose?
No, yeah, actually they did. But I had field box tickets. And I was sitting on the field, and it was one of the awesomest things in the world.
They lost amazing.
Yeah. I hate the Cowboys. Regardless, I would love for you to share with my audience how they can get in touch with you for any speaking engagements, podcast appearances, and how to access your business as well, and anything else that you might have upcoming.
Your audience, first of all, thank you guys for listening and sticking around to this part of the episode. You can reach me on my TikTok at The Real Maria Rodz. Maria, Maria, Rodz, Rodz. Same thing on Instagram and Facebook and LinkedIn, Coach Maria Rodz. YouTube at The Real Maria Rodz, because I am The Real Maria Rodz.
Cheers to that. And yeah, or you could reach out to me and I'd be happy to connect you.
Or my business is The Best Cleaning Company, of course.
The Best Cleaning Company. But I do, I thank you so much for taking the time on your boyfriend's birthday weekend to stop in and for this podcast. And yeah, I look forward to continuing this friendship as well.
Of course.
Folks, tune in and don't forget to rate, review on Apple Podcast, and it is available on all platforms. Thanks.